Welcome back to doremicom channel. I'm here with John Sigsby, who's quiet so his face won't show up. And we haven't done this in a while, but I contacted John and said, you know what, John, back in the day, I used to come up with new ideas that we would end up doing for YouTube, starting with RTD, some of the watch us play as opposed to let's play, bunch of stuff like that. And I was thinking about something else that I really wanted to kind of talk to him about. And your guys at this point are kind of here to witness the genesis potentially, or at least the discussion and talk about something else that we might be working on in the near future on the doremicom channel. And for the time being, I call it Tricky-Nomics. And without a doubt, totally and absolutely inspired by the book Freakonomics. If you haven't read it or if you haven't seen videos and stuff, I'm starting to think that it might be fun to do shows where basically we pick a topic and bring a bunch of people in to talk about it. And the idea is to come up with some sort of thing that influences said discussion point that is as far removed from it as possible while still bringing it back to the topic point. Basically, in a way, I see this as like in the RTD, how we used to have the projection question and no one could debate it. This is more of a projection answer to something and then tying it back to discuss. And maybe even going crazier than this, right? I'd love to have a whole panel where we do a couple of these, evaluate, and like do it like a game show. John, jump in here, please.
So your idea is to pick a gaming topic.
Yes.
Like I don't know, Games Workshop just released their half-year mark for last year. They lost 6.8% across the board. And then we were going to tie that into the video game industry?
No. It doesn't have to be video game industry. Not to. It's literally taking anything that you can then somehow work your way back. And so there's two parts to it, right? First, how freaky of an answer can you make? And two, how well can you tie it back? Let me give you an example. Let's say we talked about GW's financials, right? An easier thing, something that isn't freaky but easy to tie back would be, well, there's more competition, there's more games out there maybe that are more mainstream. That's not what we're looking for here, okay?
Right.
I'd much rather hear about how the quantity of limes that come in from Florida somehow impact that. And if you could tie that back like that, money.
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
No, I think that's a really cool premise. No, I agree. And I think having a full panel again, like an RTD, because I stay up at night missing the RTD. Like,
I do too, and but at the same time, sometimes I find that the RTD is missed, and we will put this back into 2015. For those of you guys who do not know what the RTD is, it stands for the Roundtable Discussion. We pick a topic. It's a far more formalized and because of that, concise and up to the point tackle of a particular issue. And but it's still meant to be fun, right? Like, we're all people that just come here, average gamers, spitting truth. Is kind of really the tagline for the RTD.
Yep. But yeah, no, I think this is a really interesting idea to see. I mean, like, the amount of research that's going to have to go into it and preparedness. Like, RTDs, I'd spend a night beforehand getting all my answers typed up and, like, sourcing all of my information. This is going to be, like, weeks of work to try to pull these things in.
But wait a minute, John. Let's be honest here. How much preparation do you think if Smurf was on the show, he'd be doing?
The night before, or the night during. So,
right. But at the same time, even though he might have the harder time reconnecting things, I bet he could come up with some freaky answers.
I bet he could too. I definitely could see him being the outlandish, like, let's go to Smurf for the wildest idea.
If we end up doing this, the kind of person that we want to bring onto this, be lighthearted, because the whole idea behind it is to sit back and have fun. If you're not having fun, we don't want you on the show. Really, is really what it boils down to. I mean, John, can you think of any better like core thing that a person has to be?
No, I can't see anybody getting on a show with, at the very least, you, Smurf, and myself, and not being funny. If somebody walked on the show with a stick up, you're just not going to have a good time.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
we'll be the ones to pull it out, and it's not a good time for anybody.
Right,
so.
right. And honestly, the more that a show breaks down to little squabble as opposed to fun banter and debate, the worse the show gets, quite honestly. If we were to run this, John, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and play along with this real quick and go, John. The topic of today, right, is GW's financials, and think of some freaky thing that somehow impacts it dramatically. I'm putting you too much on the spot?
Yeah, I think you're going to need to talk about something while I think about that, because
the lack of availability and interest in huge bags of Army men. Okay? And if I was to tie that on back, I'm going to say that the nostalgia factor as an adult, when I have bank to put down on a game and see something large scale like that, without that sort of, without that childhood interest, this goes back to when I was 5 years old and whatever, of setting up all these Army men to have this big battle. That's kind of the genesis, and you have a nostalgia piece to actually have a greater interest in these large-scale battles than if you hadn't done that, right? I look around at my at some of my family members who are younger, the next generation, and they didn't grow up with that. Whether or not it was parents who very much were tied to the notion of anything even toy related that's like this big. Oh, he's carrying a gun. No, or just the simple non-availability of those bags of Army men meant that they didn't have that, and I can't envision a time where that generation of kids are going to be really swept up and consumed the same way that my generation and possibly John's generation, who had that as a primary toy when we were younger, might have been impacted by this like large-scale scenery and battle sequences. So that's my answer.
Okay. I'm going to go with that it's actually how well off everybody is in today's society as a whole. It's way more convenient to sit at home and watch somebody else play Games Workshop games on YouTube on my computer than it is to actually go through the effort of going out and getting a game. And it's because I'm so well off that when I get home, I can just sit down and watch this on YouTube.
So I'm going to jump in here, John, because I think you're in the right avenue, but really your freaky statistic should have been more the availability of high bandwidth internet is their cause, right? Because I think how well off someone is or is not, you diminish your freaky factor, right? But if you were to, you could even be like, go even farther. You want to get freakier with your answer? You would say Google is the reason why fewer people are buying into GW's large-scale games. And then you tie it back going, it's their availability of gigabit Ethernet that's infiltrating the U.S. right now, that's pushing other broadband service providers into offering larger bandwidth of internet, and then you make it all the way back.
Right. I was going to jump off with MySpace as kind of the genesis of all of this online availability of information and stuff, as it was kind of the go-to social media. So, but I thought that was a little bit too far out there. Even.
No, I think the only thing that I would think you have hit it on the nail. I just think you need to like stretch it out, like go farther away from and again, I guess, like I said, if like for instance, I wouldn't have said the availability of any toy, right? I specifically was talking about those generic dollar huge bags of Army Men, right?
Right, like your Imperial Guard army for.
Yeah, actually, that was my first Imperial Guard army. It was Army Men. I had one box of Imperial Guard and Lego. I used Lego guys, and I used Ral Partha Dungeons and Dragons miniatures in order to play my first game of 40K back in what is that called? The first edition. It was
Rogue Trader.
Yeah, Rogue Trader.
Yep. But yeah, okay. So I get where you're going with this. I'll have to try to be more outlandish. I like to think of myself as a really good realist.
Well, I put you on the spot. And I'm not going to deny that. And I kind of came equipped, knowing what the top. So anyone who's like, oh, John, you could do much better. First off, I totally agree with that. I think you can do much better. You definitely have the skill set for it. But John didn't know what we were going to talk about. Like, literally, I put him on the spot. I said, John, get online at 10 p.m. We need to discuss this. I want to know whether or not I'm crazy or not. And since he didn't call my bluff as being crazy, I think you might see a show like this at some point. I don't think it'll be necessarily a series, but definitely,
it'll be a series. You need to make the time for it.
Nice.
I don't think you understand. I still have my Oscar from the award ceremony for RUTD. I look at that every morning in the bathroom. It's right by where I brush my teeth.